friends, I welcome you all at my YouTube channel Study of Political Science SPS Online Classes. So, this is me, Tilakraj Sharma, Research Scholar, Department of Political Science, University of Jammu. So, in our previous lecture, we have started with the Indian political system and Indian political structure, and in our first lecture of this series, we were talking about the Constitution and constitutionalism. The two questions we raised and we solved, that what Constitution means and what constitutionalism means. Second, then what is the basic difference between a constitution and constitutionalism? So, we end up on the definition and the meaning of the constitution, that a constitution can be defined as the fundamental law, custom, convention, rules and regulation stipulating that how country is ought to govern. Then, while clarifying what constitutionalism means, that it can be defined as a principle which is not just constitution but put limitation on the activities of both the individual as well as the government. So when we were talking about the constitutionalism, it simply means that constitutionalism portrays and gave the idea of limited government, which John Locke talked about. So now we are talking about the constitution and the Indian political system. When we are talking about Indian polity and the Indian constitution, so Indian constitution is not the product of a single stroke that few people sat and decided to make a certain setup of rules and regulations. No doubt we were having this constituent assembly, but it is not the product of that constituent assembly only, but it is the product of our constitution is the product of around 400 years of British rule. So the evolution of the constitution of India can be traced back in or can be divided in two phases. One was when there was company rule, and the period was 1773 to 1858, and then second phase was the crown rule, 1858 to 1947. So this lecture we will be dividing into two sub lectures. First we will be dealing with the company rule only, that how certain certain kind of the some what we call something to offer, how we were able to achieve certain things like certain concessions from the Britishers, whether it may be the British crown government or the company rule, but we were able to get certain concession, and that concession at the end up with the freedom of India, and then to have our own constitution. So let's start with the company rule. So in the company rule, which was lasted from 1773 to 1858, the East India Company is the company. Now, please understand what we mean with the company. The rule of East India Company is the company which involves a few important acts that played an essential role in the evolution of Indian Constitution. So, I'm talking about the role of the company in company rule. So, first is the Regulating Act of 1773. This is very important act. and I'll be suggesting to note few of the points that how Regulating Act of 1773 was able to grant certain concessions to the Indian, and how Indian were able to uh, enjoy certain freedoms. The initial step, the very first step, was taken by the British Parliament to control and direct the undertaking of the East India Company. Now, please understand this, that before the 1973 Act, a private company of British people backed by the British government entered into India, established their rule, and then enjoy the monopoly of trade with Indian people and the in the Indian market. And those private individuals were enjoying so much wealth when suppose a person A, after trading from India, went back to England, and that person became so much, was in possession of so much wealth that he accumulated from India. So the first step which British government thought, that why these private individuals are getting so much of wealth and so much of economy from India. So first step of the Britishers to control the rule of the company and to control the activities of the company was in the form of regulating it. So the term regulating means to regulate the activities of the East India Company. Now, with this, the presidency of Bengal was superior to those of Bombay and Madras. Actually, Britishers were able to establish their areas before this act. First, in Bengal, you may have heard about the Battle of Buxar, and the other like Awadh, Battle of Awadh, and certain other battles. So, with the defeat of Sirajudaulah, in the form of Battle of Buxar, the Britishers were able to establish their rule in Bengal, in Madras, and in Bombay. So they established presidencies there. So now, you know the what Britishers had done, they had made this Bengal as the center of their activities, and put that presidency over on the presidency of Bombay and Madras. Now also its governor, they were actually ruling through the governor. Now its governor was then designated as the governor general of all the three provinces. Please understand, first point, governor general were designated as superior to other governors. So means governor general at the top, and then followed by two governors from other presidencies. Now first person, Warren Hastings, was authorized as the governor general. Now first person who put as the governor general of Bengal was the Warren Hastings. He was given the power of superintendent's control and directions over two remaining territories. So, Warren Hastings, Governor General, then under the Warren Hastings actually supposed to control and control and superintendent the first Madras also, and then the Bengal also. Now he was now supposed to control through an executive council of four members. So the governor general was given an executive council, and then the office tenure was fixed of 5 years. Establishment of Supreme Court at Calcutta. So this is very important thing. Most of the exams may be asking when the Supreme Court of India was established and where it was established, through which act. So it was established through Regulating Act of 1773 in Calcutta. Okay, comprising the Chief Justice and three other judges. Now please, one at the top is the Chief Justice, and then other three judges, and all these three or four judges were the Britishers. Now this Regulating Act prohibited for from engaging. Now it prohibit actually the private individuals of under the company to engage in any private affair or trade, like or any commercial activity with the private individual of the or even the other states of the India. Now, Court of Directors was required to report on its revenue, military, and civil affairs in India. So it not only provided with the executive council, but it also what I mean say that it also created a court of directors, which required to report to whom? It's to Governor General, or are the governors, to on its revenue, that how much revenue is collected, how much their military spendings are, and then the civil affairs in India. So I hope you have understand this, the Regulating Act of 1773, and I'm sure you may have written those. Then the second important step is the Pitt's India Act of 1784. This is also important because sometimes we may confused with it. So, in this act, all the territories for the company were called the British possession in India. Now, this is very important. Why I have highlighted this? Because most of the time, question directly can be asked that under which act the Indian territories were called the British possessions in India. So now this is the act that Pitts under the Pitts India Act, the territory of India and the possession of the East India Company were called the British territory in India. Now, this indicated the ownership of British Crown over the territory of East India Company in India. Clear? Now, the British Crown was the supreme controller of the company's affair and its administration in India. So, in order to separate the commercial and political functions of the company, now see how government, British government, trying to control the company, how trying to regulate the company. First the territory was taken, now then supreme control was taken, and now their activity, the company which put in India, and their activities were controlled, now controlled through a court of directors and a board of control. So in order to separate the commercial and political functions of the company, the crown means British government, introduced board of control. Now this board of control will be handling the political functions or the political affairs or the administrative affairs of the company. And then commercial affairs, so I mean this with the commercial affair, that a private company came with the trade and benefit and to seek the profit from Indian territory. So this company came with the commercial purpose, and these commercial purpose under the Pitts India Act were controlled by the court of directors. Now the governors council were also formed. See, governor in other provinces, not in Governor General's executive council. Governors provinces or governor were given to a chance to form an assisted organization called Governors Council, both in Madras and in Bombay. A third one is the Charter Act of 1813. So this is not actually that important, but few of its points were important. Like for example, 1813, the era of Charter Act started, and they were supposed to pass within a period of 20 years. That this act 1813, this act finished the East India Company's monopoly over the business model trade with India. So now when 1773 British government trying to regulate the activities of the British government, East India Company. So now with the coming of 1813, the monopoly of the British East India Company now ended, and now the subject of trade is available to the British Crown. So means all the profit gained from India by the East India Company are the people engaged in India over with the trade and other commercial activities were required to report back to the crown, not in any private affairs. So, second, fourth important part of the company rule was the Charter Act of 1833. So, before going with this act, I'm requesting you all, please note down these highlighted points. They are very important points. Now, under the Charter Act of 1833, very important, please note that the Governor General of Bengal became the first Governor General of India. Now, understand that the territory of Bengal, territory of Madras, and the Bombay, after few battles and the other, administrative initiatives taken by the Britishers, so they now started calling that territory under their possession and control as the whole of India and the concept of India. So now the Governor General of Bengal was even given higher power, higher authority, and now he is called what we say the Governor General of India. And the first Governor General of India was the Lord William Bentinck. So William Bentinck was actually the Governor General of Bengal, and now it became the Governor General of India. So when question asked like who was the last Governor General of Bengal, so it was Lord William Bentinck, who became the first Governor General of India also. So second, all the civil, military and revenue administrative powers were vested in him. So means Governor General of India, then it's his executive council, and then division of the powers, like a group may be controlling the civil administration, then a group may be controlling the military administration, and then the revenue administration. This was just the beginning of central legislation. Central legislature, I mean. See, centralization, so we can even simply, understand and put in mind that the centralization in the Indian administration started from this act, Act of 1833. And the powers of legislature, the power of legislation which provided to the this Bombay and Madras presidencies was being removed, and now the supreme control was given to the Governor General of India. So transformation of the East India Company into a purely administrative body and ended all its commercial activities. So I hope you may have understand these points and noted. Then the Charter Act of 1853. When we are talking about the Charter Act of 1853, first one is the establishment of Central Legislative Council in order to separate the legislative and executive powers of the Governor General's Council, which now came to know as mini parliament. Now please I request to note the highlighted point. 1853, Central Legislative Council came into being so as to make administrative purposes and the administration more easy to work out. Then second, it consisted, now this Central Legislative Council and the the Executive and Legislative Council now consisted of 6 members, out of whom 4 were appointed by the provisional government, okay, provincial, of Bengal, Bombay, Madras, and Agra. 4 provinces: Bengal, Bombay, Madras, and Agra. They were supposed to appoint 4 members. Introduction of the open examination called civil service examination. So this is again very important question. Maximum time in all the competitive examination, mostly in UPSC and in JKPSC and other public service commissions of the state, directly a question may be called under which act the civil service examination in India started, or even what you call that in which year. So please note down this point also. Are those people who are aspiring for very good job. So please note down these highlighted points. Now, in 1957 or 1857, I'm sorry, India witnessed a nationwide protest and nationwide wide revolt against the Britishers, which may be called the first war of independence, and somewhere all India revolt. Different narratives and different interpretations of that came out. Sometime people were alleged that it is just a Sepoy mutiny, or it's just some self-interested princes of Indian states who were revolting. But yes, I would be saying that it's the first world war of independence from India's side. And now with this 1857, British government took the direct control of the India and its administration, and now this the era of the company rule in India was ended, and ended in a very dramatic style. And now India became a complete colony and a subjugated territory and a dependent territory of the British crown. So with this, I'm ending up of today's lecture. I'll be coming very soon with the second lecture of that what we call the evolution of the Indian Constitution under the British crown, which is very important to witness. Please have patience and be with me. I would request to kindly subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos. I'll be very highly obliged and thankful for your encouragement, and very thankful for your suggestions. I'll be putting my mobile phone, my contact number, so please feel free to put any question in the comment box, and even you can directly call me. Thank you so much.